I'm located in western Kentucky, which is kind of 1,000 miles pretty much, or 900,000 miles from the east coast and 2,000 from the west coast. So not quite in the middle of it, but getting there. So I moved over here in February 2004. Always been involved with farming. So we have a seed business established here, and of course the research and agronomy that goes around those seed products. So that's basically, what I spend most of my time working on.
The traded grain markets are dominated by a number of superpower producers or regions. South America, the Baltic states, Russia, Europe, China, and of course the USA are the major ones. What happens in these regions matters a lot in terms of current supply and also future supply. When was the last time you have read about the maize or soya bean harvest in the US? You are listening to the latest episode of the Tillage Edge with me, Michael Hennessy. We would really appreciate it if you listen, follow, and give us a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast from. Getting an insight into US grain farmers is always fascinating, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Brian Caldbeck, a Laois man who's been living and working in the heart of the US for many years.
I'm located in western Kentucky, which is kind of 1,000 miles pretty much, or 900,000 miles from the east coast and 2,000 from the west coast. So not quite in the middle of it, but getting there. So I moved over here in February 2004. Always been involved with farming. So we have a seed business established here, and of course the research and agronomy that goes around those seed products. So that's basically, what I spend most of my time working on.
Certainly my impression, or certainly in my head at least anyway, I don't know much about Kentucky, but I always associated with horses and horse racing and that kind of stuff. But obviously it's a pretty big place, known America. So I presume you might maybe give a little bit of relevance in terms of maybe the size of the state that you're in comparison maybe to Ireland.
So Kentucky's I think it's a little bit bigger than Ireland, as regards area. Populations, I think 5 or 6 million. So the population's not a whole lot different. So it's, just a little bit bigger, I think, in the surface area. There's a lot of mountains and stuff in parts of it, and trees and things like that, especially in the eastern part of it, where, there was a lot of coal mining and things over the years.
And in the part that you're in then, is more cropland then, is it, Brian?
Yeah, so in western Kentucky where I am, it's pretty much all cropland. The state is what? We have about maybe 650,000 hectares of maize, 800,000 hectares of soybeans, 150,000 hectares of wheat. And then, that's the main cropping here. Then we got some tobacco, very tiny amounts of barley. We got some oilseed rape, food grade, some industrial oilseed rape, but very small in comparison to the other three major crops.
Okay, I suppose maize, as you were saying, there's probably one of the maize and soya would in any state, I suppose, be the biggest crops out there.
Yeah, there's, like I say, we got that sort of hectares in the country. I mean, I think it's around 90 million. I'm going to go to acres now, but 90 million acres of maize and about 90 million acres of beans. So Kentucky's like 1 to 2% on either of those crops. Versus
it's kind of like the Ireland of the Ireland of Europe in comparison to some of the other bigger states out there. In terms of size of farmers, though, I presume is there relatively big farmers in there, or is it medium to small, or what way is it set up?
So that's a good question. I mean, the average size of farms here in Kentucky, I think, is around 174 acres. But if you live in the city and you buy 10 acres out in the country, you're designated a farm, and there's a lot of that. So that really pulls that average down. But being realistic about it, I mean, there's not too many full-time farmers, less than, 1,000 to 1,500 acres in crops,
And in terms of that then, how are American farmers doing? Or maybe it's different in Kentucky. How are they faring financially over the last 2 or 3 years? Have they been doing pretty well, or what way are they?
I think farmers have done pretty well, even since COVID there, it kind of gave everybody a little bit of a shock as regards the food supply and all the rest. Farming really didn't really have any impact from COVID over here. We could kind of move around as we liked, really. So yeah, they since then, I think course, there was some spikes in fertilizer prices here and there along the line, but spikes in commodity prices too. But overall, it's been pretty good the last couple of years. Yeah.
And go back to what you do in terms of your business. You're supplying seed. Is that seed of all of the main crops that you're talking about, the likes of maize, soya, oilseed rape, that kind of stuff, or are you more specific?
Our primary, the crop that we primarily work with is food grade oilseed rape, and then we do a little bit with the industrial oilseed rape, and we distribute that across the US. And then I do a little bit with oats, some with peas, some with sunflowers, some with rye, a little bit with barley. But yeah, the oilseed rape is the biggest part of our business.
Okay, and have you got specific growers growing it for you in the area to then bring back, assemble, and shoot out to different customers out there? Is that the way it works, or are you an intermediary?
A lot of we grow some of our own seed, but a lot of our seed is imported from Europe.
Oh,
Because we have a non-GM product. It's really difficult to find places that you can't, get cross contamination with the genetically modified canola, as they call it out here. There's, pretty much in the winter side of it, the only really trait that's in the winter canola out here is Roundup resistance, and that, is we need, obviously when our customers buy our product, they want to buy the non-GM component because they're going for a premium weight, and so then it's difficult to find seed. So you have to be careful where you plant the seed, because that crop can cross pollinate and all the rest over quite a distance, and then of course into the cleaning plants and all the rest of. So it's just a tricky crop with that small seed, to keep it clean.
And in terms of the markets, in terms of food grade, that's going to, is it cold pressed oil, or is it more varied markets than that?
Solvent extraction, cold pressed, expeller pressed, you name it. It's, different companies set themselves up in different ways. Most of the larger scale processors are hexane, but some of the smaller guys, and there's a couple of large expeller presses as well, but most of the large ones are hexane, and then you might have somebody crushing maybe 5 or 10,000 acres with a small cold press or an expeller press.
Sorry, hexane. What do you mean by hexane?
Well, hexane is a hydrocarbon solvent, and basically it's really efficient at pulling the oil out of any dry matter. So they basically break up the seeds of soybean or canola or whatever, and then it's immersed in this hexane, and the oil partitions into the hexane, and then they flash the hexane off by by flashing it off, evaporating it off at 70 or 80 degrees centigrade, and then the oil is left. The oil-free hexane is or hexane-free oil is left. Then
a very different product to the cold pressed oil then.
Very, very different, but very efficient. And, we can get down to pretty much zero oil left in the meal. Like the soybean meal that would go to Ireland is pretty much all hexane extracted, and there's not much oil left in it, and all the rest. And whereas the expeller pressed, you're still leaving 7, 8, 9, 10% maybe, especially on the cold side, even 12% oil in the cake, or the meal. And that's fine for livestock and all the rest. If your buyer will give you value or give you credit for the residual oil in there,
So you obviously with that, then you have a great insight then into, I presume, a lot of your customers all the way around the United States. And maybe we might just go, I suppose, first in terms of, we're just about finished up harvest. There's a few guys still, unfortunately, have a little bit in the ground, but we're just about finished, I suppose. In your region where you are kind of more locally, is harvest finished there at the moment? And maybe we might just maybe go to the general picture in the US after that.
So in this area here, the maize is pretty much wrapped up. There's a few fields left. Full season beans are pretty much gone as well. We've had a good run of the weather here lately, and they're all pretty much finished up. What we've left really here now, and we're starting on them here, is the double crop soybeans that's planted after winter wheat, and they'll run for another, I don't know, 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks. We'll probably finish them by the time we get past Halloween here. We should be pretty much finished with all of that,
So to go back a second there, you mentioned, because this is stuff that I suppose most people over here probably wouldn't have an insight into. Double crop beans is what? Now explain that to me.
The rotation here in this area primarily is they'll plant maize. Say they planted maize last year and harvested in August. They'll go in then and they'll plant winter wheat then in late September, early October. And that wheat will come off in June, the first 15 days of June usually. And then they'll come in and plant soybeans after that. and that's why we call them a double crop, because they'll have two harvests in that field in the same year, you know.
Okay, that must be a very profitable enterprise, so.
Yeah, I mean it is, but you have to run your equipment twice. It puts more demands on your labor. You know, it's more intense if you like. It's very intensive production, and you can make some good money at it if you can find the resources to get it done. You know, like good labor. It's very hard to get good people anymore to work. You know, so a lot of the emphasis now is moving towards machines without people in them, and you probably have seen that over there too.
Sure.
So yeah, but if you've got a good team with you and all the rest, you can definitely make some good money on that. Now you have to have the summer rains, and in Kentucky our average rainfall is per annum, is about 45 inches, which is higher than the rainfall in Ireland. But that allows us to grow, some pretty productive crops during the summer months when it's 30 degrees every day and it's hot.
So just on that then, in terms of the yields, to just give people an idea, in terms of yields, what sort of yields, if you can convert them yourself, because we won't know too much about it, from bushels into tons per acre or per hectare of the likes of the maize and the winter wheat and the first and second crop soybeans, what sort of yields are you getting off all those?
I'd say the wheat is 5 ton to the hectare, you know,
Right.
and the corn is probably 10 to 12 ton to the hectare, and the beans are probably 5 ton to the hectare.
She's all very productive crops, really, all in all.
Yeah, yeah, pretty good. Now the wheat compared to European standards is
Low.
not
But that's
wonderful.
high grade milling, I presume, or it's a milling wheat kind of job, is it?
It's a soft red winter wheat we grow here, and yeah, it's high grade as long as we don't get fusarium or something in it. Yeah.
And in a general sense, in the picture in the States at the moment, if would it be right in reading that they're about maybe a maybe halfway through the harvest, or maybe a little bit more, give or take,
They're probably a
in
little
terms
bit
of
more.
maize? Yeah.
Yeah, they're probably a little bit more as you move up into the corn belt and things like that. They're probably 60, I would say 65 to 75%
Okay.
done at this point, and they're getting a pretty good run ahead.
And the yields look, or from what I'm hearing, they seem to be pretty good, and certainly maybe average or a bit better at least.
Yeah, there's a few holes here and there. Kansas and Oklahoma this year was pretty poor on the wheat. And Texas, they've had a really tough time out there with no rain for the last 9 months, or very, very little rain. They were a little rough on the wheat, but then the wheat here was above average, and the wheat seems like it's pretty good up in the Dakotas as well. So I think the wheat might be back a little bit overall, but the corn and the maize and the soybeans is in pretty good shape.
And obviously, the maize is probably the big one that probably drives commodity prices probably back this side of the world, really, for the most part. It's maybe the one to drive it a lot in Ireland, certainly, anyway.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
and just in that, on that end of it, again, I was reading a little bit, and I don't know how much truth is in it, because I only read it in one or two different places, where they were kind of saying that the rivers are a little bit low, and there's a bit of a problem getting the grain away and getting it exported and that kind of thing. Have you heard much of that at all, or does that affect Kentucky at all?
Yeah, that's kind of a annual thing. The rainfalls are pretty, even though we have a high rainfall, those rivers pull, we're right on the Ohio River, which feeds into the Mississippi. So, but the watershed or the catchment area for those rivers is huge, and a lot of times here in July and August, a lot of these areas don't get much rain, so those rivers normally go down. But the Corps of Engineers over the years have built some really good reservoirs and things, and they're able to keep them, kind of topped up or up to ballast weights and all the rest, by allowing some water to get in there into the system, if you like. So, but yeah, it's a seasonal thing. But yeah, I've heard some people talking about it, and that puts a little bit of pressure on the green grain coming off the combines. And if you don't have storage, you're going to take a little bit of a hit on trying to get rid of it, or your price is going to go down for it as the markets go down accordingly.
And in terms of you were saying the you're kind of close to that kind of a transportation kind of scenario. How far do most farmers have to bring their grain to these elevators?
For most of the common crops, really, I mean, so the elevators, you can probably get one within 10 or 15 miles of wherever you would live, pretty much around here for sure, and in most of the country, really. But then if you want to go to the end processor, where, the end buyer, if you like, where you might get a little bit better price and you do your own shipping, then you might have to drive 100 or 200 miles or something like that. But if you want to tap into the elevator system and work with those people, it's pretty accessible really everywhere.
Okay. So it's a fairly fluid market out there, really, for the most part, but it's relatively well set up with I suppose the equivalent of a merchant trade over here.
Very, very, very well set up that way to handle grain for sure. Yeah.
So maybe just turning back a little bit, maybe back to more the agronomy side of the house in terms of the winter crops. I think you were saying that a lot of them are kind of sown somewhere in October. Has that started already in terms of planting winter wheat?
Yeah, wheat's probably all the way now today, heading for the 20th. Wheat's probably 40%, maybe 50% done, seeded. I hear, and out in Kansas and Texas, of course, and those places, and yeah, so it's progressing pretty well here at the minute, yes.
Just the last question, I'll leave you go with this because I know you're busy and I'm only catching you maybe on the side of you're heading from one spot to another there. In terms of your own, you've been out there for a long time now. Are you doing a bit of farming yourself out there?
Yeah, we have a small farm here. We purchased a couple of years ago, and our neighbor, his equipment does the work on it for us. But that's my involvement with it, So yeah, so a little bit of farming, but nothing serious,
Very good. You're not sucklers now or anything like that. Are you go tillage farmer? Or...
No, it's all crops. Yeah.
All crop. Well, I'm delighted to hear that. Anyway, not going to revert back to the old sucklers. That's the common one out here, I suppose, really. But look, Brian, it's been fantastic talking to you, and it's great to get a bit of an insight in what's going on out in the US.
Yeah,
and
if
you're up for it, we might touch base with you again, maybe in a few months' time, just to see how you're getting on out there.
Yeah, sure. Give us a shout anytime. Thank you.
So that's it for this week, and a huge thanks to Brian for joining me on the show. We will return in a few months to catch up with Brian again. An event for your diary is the Teagasc ECT Grassweed Conference, which takes place in the Killishy Hotel on November the 8th at 10:30 a.m. The event will delve into the increasing problem of grass weeds on Irish tillage farms, including blackgrass, herbicide-resistant wild oats, ryegrass and more. We will also hear from a number of farmers who are working with the project over the last 5 years. And finally, don't forget, if you enjoyed the podcast, then recommend it to a friend or colleague. And as always, rate, review and follow on Apple or Spotify so you never miss an episode. And for more information, go to teagasc.ie. I'm Michael Hennessy, with a cold as you can hear. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week with more tillage news and advice.